So, guys, I want to talk about AEW a little bit. And last night they announced that there's going to be a national championship. And I do agree with the majority of people that, this is, unnecessary and it's a little like enough is enough with championship belts. Because, it looks like that, Ricochet, because what they announced with the national championship is that there's going to be a casino gauntlet. And the winner, and that just means that two people go in and then another person comes in, just like in the Royal Rumble. But what happens is the way to win that match is somebody has to get a pinfall, and let's say there's 20 people total. So what happens is that if the first two people there's a pinfall between them, the other people don't have an opportunity of coming in. But with that said, that's usually for a contendership for the heavyweight championship. But I do want to mention that it's a little annoying as well, really, because Ricochet and Bobby Lashley, the Hurt Syndicate, they've been feuding for a couple of months. So it is time to say, hey, you know what? They need to just work with other people on the roster. Really, like I said, they should have had a match next week. The Demand versus Hurt Syndicate, the winners face the Ops for the trios titles, and you could have done that where Samoa Joe has two matches, or he finds a substitute or something like that, really. Or you know what, there's a trios championship match at like a later date or something like that. But the point of it is that you know that's one of the bad issues that it keeps Bobby Lashley and Ricochet feuding, and then it also it's bad because it keeps them feuding over another title instead of a trios title. That would make a lot more sense. And then also too, you have a lot of people in the trios division, so it's almost like again by having like these six wrestlers in another division, really. Or like in a tournament invitational, you assume that Bobby Lashley or Ricochet is going to win this. Um, it's almost like saying, why are you doing this? Why do you have trios teams with many people holding singles titles? Why do you have people like Bandito, who is getting over in a big way? Why is he a heavyweight champion and a tag team champion? So you're also running into that issue too, where you have a bunch of people who are in tag team and trios division. Um, Going over in singles divisions, and they're ultimately not representing their singles title that well, or they're not representing the tag team division that well. For example, Bandito is looked at as a tag team wrestler, not the Ring of Honor champion. And then you also look at somebody like Athena, where she's looked at as the ROH champion, not a tag team wrestler. That's what I'm trying to say, really. So if the Hurt Syndicate is a trio, why are they focused on a singles title? So that's one of the reasons why this title makes no sense. Why is Ricochet? Why is he wanting to go after a singles title when he has two other people with him and they make a good trios team? It doesn't make sense that you have people in the trios division going after singles titles. Really, it does not make any sense. Some you have to limit, and also you have to limit who you do that with. Like you have Joe going after the World Heavyweight Championship. He's part of the ops, really. So if you want to do one or two people, no problem. But if you do multiple people, like you have Hurt Syndicate, Ops, and the Demand all going after singles titles, that's just not a good look, really. The other thing that I will say is that I don't think Tony Khan understands the purpose of championships. That really championships are almost to elevate a wrestler or to be like, hey, we have something to fight over. But it's almost like it's almost like a power up in a video game where like ultimately like a person like John Cena with a championship is harder to beat than John Cena without a championship, or Triple H with a championship is hard to beat with Triple H without a championship, if you want to go by that logic, really. So when you give so many titles to people, when you have like so many championships, um it diminishes. It makes everybody look weaker because it's way too many belts. And then the other issue with having way too many belts is that you need divisions. Really, you need people to fight over each belt. Really, so the problem with AEW is you ultimately have really like three or four, you have like for the men's, you have like really three or four divisions. You have the heavyweight division, which is the AEW championship, and then you have two tag team divisions. One's for the tag team, one's for the trios. And then on the bottom you have then you have two more levels. You have the Ring of Honor championships. So you hold a title and you're on the Ring of Honor show. So those don't matter. It's like on the very bottom. And then um the top is the AEW championship. The second one is the tag team championship. Um and then trios, because tag teams kind of like featured a lot. And then the third level, in my opinion, is the singles titles. So that's like the that's the TNT national the international title, the unified, the continental championship, and below that's the Ring of Honor championships. Because like Ring of Honor championships don't mean that much, because like they said, they you have more people watching Rampage than you do Ring of Honor, really. So the Ring of Honor championships really don't mean anything, you know, except for the ROH championship, just because that has a lineage. So when you have like an extra title, you're almost like saying, okay, we're gonna water down this division, and they don't do singles titles that well, really. Like the only, really the best singles title that they have. Like if I was a professional wrestler in AEW, and I was to go after a singles title that was not the heavyweight, I would say the best one is the TNT Championship, because you've had people work very well with that, and you've had feuds and storylines. But the problem is that you look at the other championships, like you had the International Championship, which was a bad title because he changed it a few times. I think it was the Atlantic, then became the United States, then became the International one. So he changed its name 3 times. And then the next one is the Continental Championship, which is a bad one, because the way you win the Continental Championship is 2 ways. You have to challenge the person to a match, or the person has to participate, or the champion always has to participate in the Continental Classic every single year. So it's almost like having a Royal Rumble championship, or a Money in the Bank championship, or an Elimination Chamber championship. It makes no sense, really. Um, and then also you created the Unified Championship, which is that if you hold the International Championship and the Continental Championship, it created the Unified Championship. But the Unified Championship makes no sense, because then it's another title and division. Why would you create a division for somebody for unifying 2 belts, really? It's almost like, in WWE, when I think it was Jeff Hardy won the European Championship, International Championship, and they unified it to the International Championship. They didn't do something like say, hey, you know what? We also have the Unified Championship or the Combined Championship. Like nobody really creates a title for combining 2 belts, really. And one of the reasons why they combine 2 belts is so they get rid of one. Like just like last year with Cody Rhodes, I think it was like this year or last year, Cody Rhodes won the Universal Championship and WWE Championship. So what they did was they quietly retired, the Universal Championship, because they said, oh, we don't want to have something where it's a person holding 2 belts, but that person's not really defending one of them. Or we're not going to say, okay, he's holding 2 belts, and then we're going to create a 3rd belt saying, hey, you know what, you're unified. So therefore, like every single time a person wins the WWE Championship in that hypothetical situation, they're getting 3 heavyweight titles. They're getting the WWE Universal and a Unified Championship. That's why the Unified doesn't make any sense. But when you have a lot of titles that don't really make sense, and then you add another one in there, it just becomes like laughable. And that's kind of what we have with the National Championship. And then also too, with some championships, you have to have certain stipulations. I feel like, for example, like I know with tag team, obviously tag team wrestling, trios wrestling, you have the Pure Championship, which I think is the worst championship in professional wrestling history, because I don't like all the rules, but that's stipulations. But the other thing too is that, what are you going to do with the National Championship? Is it something where you can only wrestle it in the U.S. and in an independent promotion in the indies or something like that? Like, what do you do with the National Championship? Because I think it was inspired by the NWA, and in NWA, they always brought people with the NWA championships, like that, either tag team or United States or other ones, and they went to other territories to wrestle, really. So what are you doing the national championship? Um, but then I think the other thing that I would say is that another big problem with AEW is that they have long title reigns. And one of the reasons why they have long title reigns is because they don't know how to take the title off of somebody, or they just feel like, okay, it just hurts a division or a show if somebody loses their title. For example, um, and I'll say a final thing. If you have somebody holding a title for a very long time, it also says, hey, I don't trust other people with a title, or I don't know how to tell a good story with somebody else. For example, Athena, in my opinion, she's one of the worst champions in AEW history, in the sense that it's almost like you're really showing that you're afraid of making her a star in AEW on AEW television. She has to kind of hold up ROH, really, because they're afraid that if they lose Athena wins, loses the belt, then she's gonna go on to AEW. Then it's almost like, AEW television. That's like, who's gonna hold down Ring of Honor? Is it gonna be Billy Starks? Who's it gonna be, really? So that's one of the reasons why you have her hold a championship. And the same thing with Okada. Like, it's easy just to give people all the titles that you want because you're friends with them, but it's also good to say, it's also easy to say, hey, you know what, we don't know how to find the next big star, really. Like, look at NXT. Like, they always try to find the next big star. That there's a reason why you had Roman Reigns, Adam Cole, Samoa Joe, Ricky Saints, Oba Femi, and many, many other ones. The list goes on and on of NXT champions. But they also did that thing too of when the champion has done everything they could do, they either just they go to the main roster, because they know that when somebody wins a championship, they have to think about what's the next big championship they win. There's a reason why, Triple H and Shawn Michaels and a lot of other wrestlers, or John Cena, they started with the United States, international, or tag team, because it was a way to kind of build them upwards. And with AEW, when you give people long title reigns, it's saying two things. You're saying, number one, you can't build new stars, you can't build new divisions, you can't trust other people to hold titles because you're afraid that's going to kill the ratings. The next thing is that it also says that, maybe you're giving people championships so they feel good about themselves. So they're like, okay, well, Bobby Lashley, in my opinion, he's the most powerful wrestler in AEW right now because he has the in-ring experience. But really, if any wrestler in that roster wanted to pick a fight with him, he would beat them. So maybe they're like, okay, you're the national champion because we can't give you the AEW championship because we like Hangman so much, really. So we're going to give you a consolation prize. Or even like with Okada, like he's holding 3 championships. That might be a consolation prize because they don't want him to be the AEW champion, because they may be like, oh, well, you know what, you don't translate well to an American audience because he doesn't, he can't cut an English speaking promo that well, really. And I'm just saying it as it is, really. Or you look at Mercedes, where she's allowed to have 13 belts, but one of the reasons why she's doing that is because that way it might make her happy to say, I'm holding 13 belts, but Tony Khan has the final say when it comes to AEW Women's Championship. So there has to be, those are all like factors, really. Well, like when you have a company with a lot of people with belts, and you don't want to take titles off of them. So what's gonna happen with the national championship? Are you gonna put on Bobby Lashley for the longest time? Are you gonna put on Ricochet for the longest time? Are you gonna do something like say, hey, I don't know what to do with Bobby Lashley and Ricochet, so they're gonna fight over this title, and it's gonna be something where Ricochet is going to hold it for like a year or something like that, and then Wembley Stadium, we're going to have one more match between them. That could be a direction, really, because I also think it allows them to linger on stuff. So, but yeah, I just think that's another bad move. They have way too many championships. They have way too many long reigning champions because they don't know how to build other stars, and maybe like everybody gets one or to feel good about themselves. Or it may be one of those things where they're afraid to lose ratings, or they're afraid to be like, okay, you know what, we're gonna kill the show if we take the title off of somebody, or we just want to do the same old shit, really, because it's easy to just let something continue and let something repeat instead of doing better, really. So I'm really not for this championship, and I think it's very detrimental to AEW.